Good morning, everybody. I'm back here with Shirley Bloomfield on this week's episode of Java with Jen, Java with Jen, Java with Jen. Each week, I come on here with bold leadership moves with guest experts. And if you haven't met me, my name's Jen Koch, and I'm your favorite executive leadership coach who works with you to lead with more authority, influence, and impact. And shameless plug, get my book because this is your roadmap to success. And today I surprised Shirley because she thought I was just going to be on introducing her. Today I'm bringing Shirley on because she's got to get to a meeting. You want to be conscientious of her time. And Shirley is the CEO of the National Rural Broadband Association, NTCA, which is the premier organization of 850 rural broadband associations, truly leading innovation in rural America and small towns. And last week, if you had a chance to tune in, great. If you didn't, you can go back and watch the replay. Shirley has become a friend over the years. We've been working together for about 8 years because she has a commitment to empower the women in her office. There are 64. I mean, she has a commitment to empower everyone. I don't want to seem like you don't. But there's 64 GMs, right, of broadband companies. So you have a special fire in your heart to empower those folks who are other women CEOs. And last week we talked about kind of what happened when you got to the boardroom after working for NTCA for 20 years and then becoming the CEO. You'll have to go back to watch that to find out what she said. But one of the things she left us with is we talked about making sure you have allies when you're presenting something. For you, it was your plan or whatever your agenda is, and you made sure to talk with people beforehand, right? I want to talk today about, because not everybody's going to be interacting with the board, but what about serving on a board or presenting to a board? And let me just make sure that I've got some, like, what do you need to watch and how can you give away power in either one of those scenarios?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, Jen. So, nobody wants to give away power. We work so hard to get that power. Don't give it away. So it's interesting, and I will share something with you that I notice in boardrooms, and I serve on a couple of boards as well. So I have the opportunity to see not only as a CEO but also as a board member, which is kind of fascinating. But one of the things, and this is a little bit of a gender bias, I will say, and I notice it, but men notice it, is women can be very relationship oriented. And I have women on my board who like each other, and that's great. And that's terrific. But it's a small percentage of women who serve on my board versus men. I literally finally had to tell them, please stop sitting next to each other when they walk into a boardroom. I literally, because I started to notice the men around the table kind of being like, it's the girls' club over there. It's the joke that everybody like to make when, women go to the bathroom and we have to go as a group. So I really had to kind of find a space within myself to say, I think you'd have more credibility around the table if you changed up where you sat every meeting and maybe spent a little bit more time getting to know some of the other board members without having to flat out say, the optics of my two women on the board sitting next to each other every single meeting, every single lunch is starting to become obvious. And I think it's drawing away from their power in the boardroom. But that's kind of one of those observation things. But I respect them both enough that I figured out a way to kind of share that feedback, which isn't always easy because you're basically messing with people's comfort zones.
Right.
But I think it really has been pretty impactful because, as you and I've talked before, reading the room, where do you sit? How do you, when do you jump in? Do you make sure you jump in? All of those things really kind of matter when you think about how seriously you're being taken in that boardroom, whether you're presenting, whether you're the CEO or whether you're a participant as a board member.
Yeah. And all those things you just talked about could be applied to any meeting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I will share, this is one thing I share with young women that I work with, younger women that I work with. And that is, and it's my tip, I do it myself all the time. Find one thing to say at the start of a meeting. It doesn't have to be at the very start, but don't let yourself get 2 hours into a meeting without having something to share.
Hmm.
It gets harder and harder to kind of break in. Sometimes I use humor as a, somebody will say something and I'll make a joke, or I will make a point of having a question, a follow-up that I'd like to ask somebody. But I find that once you speak, you've demystified the meeting a little bit. And you've kind of made it very clear you are a participant around that table. So it's again, it's something that I even encourage my own daughters to do. It's get it out there in the first hour. You're going to be amazed at how you like breathe easier, and then you can actually just engage in the meeting because now you're like, yeah, I'm at the table. I'm here now.
Yeah, I love that because it's also goes, it's kind of like gender dynamics because as women, we're taught at very, very young age, like you sit and you listen, we're trained to listen. And I think when you speak up, and I love that you said just humor, a point, whatever it is, if you see the agenda beforehand, maybe you research an article that you read that you thought was interesting, but it is claiming your space in that moment.
It's a perfect way to state it. And once you've done that, the pressure is off. And then I find you can be more effective because then you're in the moment. You're not so worried about like, are they taking me seriously? Do I have something to add? When am I going to jump in? And so, yeah.
Yeah. Something you mentioned though about reading the room. One, how do you read the room? And two, what do you do with it? Okay, you've read the room. Now what?
So reading the room, and this is where I think, we all have a quotient of emotional intelligence, how much we tap it, where we choose to tap it. But I think it is really that sense of, walking in the room, where are people sitting? Who's sitting together? Who's sitting by themselves? Do you have somebody who tends to want to drive the meeting? Where are they sitting? Who's sitting next to them? And getting a sense of some of that and the vibe in the room. Is the room quiet? Or are you walking in and people are settling in and they're kind of chit-chatting with each other? Are you seeing people off in the corner? And are you sitting there thinking, are they collaborating? Are they talking about me? Are they, what's happening in that corner? Is that, because I think one of the things that is a pitfall for every board is when the board meeting happens not around the board table. When the board meeting happens in that corner or out in the hallway, it's like, let's get it around the table. So it's walking into the room and getting a sense of all of that, particularly once you know the players. But I think walking into any room and getting a sense of, who's going to be my toughest critic? Who am I going to have to, work through? Oh, this person really likes data. This person likes study, whatever that might be. And picking that up as quickly as you can.
Okay, so now we've read the room, we're picking up data, we're noticing. One of the things because it's also awkward when you're walking into whether it's your own meeting or somebody else's meeting, if you're in external affairs and going to a stakeholders meeting, you do that all the time. We were out meeting with the other broadband or the other broadband companies around the country, right? What's a question that versus, hey, how are you? People know who you are. So you want to find out about them. But let's say people don't know who you are. And what's a question you could ask to open up the conversation that's non-traditional? I'm putting you on the spot here. That's non-traditional that would make people go, oh, right, Shirley asked me about X.
That's a really good question. And I will say it really depends. I've been finding, just given the state of the industry right now, that I'm naturally curious. My husband finds me overly curious, but I actually really do like to delve into what's keeping you up at night. What is going through your head at night? That whole sense of, is it concern about the future of the industry? Is it concern about future funding? Is it my team is driving me crazy? But I find that once I know what is really preoccupying a big part of somebody's brain, it's easier for me to figure out how can I support them? What kind of information can I give them to help them sleep easier.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a way as opposed to, I think diving in a little bit too personally, too quickly. But for me, it's kind of getting a sense of, all right, what's a lay of the land for you?
Right.
And it
Right.
may be, and for sometimes, people will answer with a very personal response. And that's fair too. But I really do want to know
What's keeping you up at night?
what's
I think,
keeping you up at night.
yeah. And if you don't feel comfortable, one of my favorite questions is, what's been the best part of your day so far?
Yeah.
Or the best part of your week or your weekend? And people love to talk about their family or what movie they saw or where they went out to dinner
Yeah.
or any of those things, which also strikes up, and you're interacting with them. So they're getting a dopamine hit, having this great memory. And that also can make you memorable. Let me see if there's any other question I want to ask you. Okay. All
And
right.
to that end, Jen, the other one that I always love
Yeah.
to ask people is, are you going someplace fun soon? And once
Oh,
you do that, that's when you figure out what their hobbies are, what their interests are. Is it the family? Is it we planned a 40th anniversary trip? It's amazing how much you get from that question. And I find that when there's a real lull and you're in a little group, I'm always like, hey, anybody going to go anywhere fun soon? And then watching kind of that
that's
flow
great.
start.
My only fear is that people will say Disneyland, which is my personal hell. Just
Well,
saying.
there you go. Your head will blow up, but
Now you know something more personal. Okay. Why is something as small as where you sit in a boardroom so critical? And how do women inadvertently send the wrong signal before they even speak?
so where you sit is important. And I think so much of it depends on how the room is set, whether there's patterns for how is that, as a chairperson sit at the head of the table. One of the things that I would say about that um, is don't isolate yourself. I mean, that to me is the most obvious. Whether you're sitting, I need to be right next to the chairperson. There's some obvious power moves that I tend to discount a little bit, honestly. But you do find somebody who will see, if you've got that you or whatever who's at the far end, don't don't isolate yourself. I mean, right away you're already, and you may be like, well, I want more space, or I'm going to be on my laptop half the time. I don't want people to know that.
Right.
But it's kind of the same sensation as sitting down at a table and pushing your chair back. It disengages you. And I think that the most important thing, and so it may be awkward to take that empty seat in between two people, but it pulls you right into the group right away. And I think that engagement is really important. And now I can't even remember the second part of your question. I was so focused on don't isolate
I was
yourself.
saying where you sit and how do women inadvertently send the wrong signal before they even speak, besides where they're sitting?
Yeah. The wrong signal, and that kind of depends on how you determine what the wrong signal is. I have spent my career, partially because, again, I have to be taken in seriously in a room where virtually most of the tables I sit around, I am the only woman or one of a very few. So I am probably overly conscious of being taken seriously. I have, I very much have this sense of I may be able to joke around, but you need to take me seriously. Obviously, you earn that credibility at some point, I'd like to think. But I think, again, it's knowing your audience. Don't be silly. Don't be talking about things that, again, when I reference two women sitting next to each other in a meeting, don't start flowing into what the men around the table will say is a female-oriented conversation. I love your shoes. Where did you get them? I love that discussion as much as anybody else, but I am very mindful. I have to be taken seriously.
Right.
Let's talk about shoes when we're in the corridor. But right now, I want you to treat me as a professional. I want to be treated as a professional. So it's making sure that, something comes out that makes it clear that I have a command of what we're going to be doing in that board meeting.
I love that. And I think I love the, but how do I be taken seriously? Because you keep giving me these great segues for what we're going to be talking about next week, which is the strategies to claim your authority. So everybody, thank you, Shirley, for being on here this week with this week's episode of Java with Jen. For everyone else, Shirley's joining me as my guest on our monthly Empowering Experts series, where we're going to get into a lot more questions and presentation about decoding boardroom dynamics. That is on May 22nd, Thursday at 11 a.m. There'll be a link in the comments for you to be able to join us that day. And that way you can have a little bit of one-on-one from Shirley and get the benefit of her wisdom. So until next time, friends, thanks for joining us with Java with Jen, Java with Jen and Shirley. Java with Jen, Java with Jen. Ciao, ciao for now, friends.